This is lesson 5-1, factors, multiples, and divisibility. Our essential question, how are factors and divisibility related? And here is our divisibility rules, and this is going to be essential to our lesson. And you don't have to memorize these. I'm going to put them on the slides, and I'm also going to give you one for your journal as well. So you'll have that to look at. We have two vocab words. Our first one is multiple, and a multiple of a given number is a product of that number and a whole number greater than 0. And really, when we do multiples, what we're really doing is just skip counting. And that's something that you did in elementary school, so you should be familiar with that. So I want you to add that on with your definition because I think that will be easier for you to remember. And then our second vocab word is divisible. A number is divisible by another number when the quotient is a whole number and the remainder is 0. So basically when you divide it, it goes in evenly. And if it does, that means it is divisible. Okay, example number 1. So we're trying to figure out if the number 60 is divisible by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, or 10. And we're going to look at our rules, go through each rule, and see if 60 is divisible by these numbers. So we're going to see first if 60 is divisible by 2. So let's read our rule for 2 right here. If the last digit is even. So they listed the even numbers here for us, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. And clearly 60 ends in a 0. So yes, it is divisible by 2. So I'm going to put a check mark over the 2. And basically what that means is if we divided 60 divided by 2, we would get a whole number. We would get 30. It goes in evenly. That's all we're trying to figure out. Does it go in evenly? Okay, can 30 be divided by 3? Is it divisible by 3? So let's look at our rule. If the sum of the digits is divisible by 3. So the sum of our digits, so sum means to add them. We have a 6 and a 0. So if I add 6 plus 0, I get 6. And so now we have to say, is 6 divisible by 3? And yes, we know 6 divided by 3 is 2. So 3 is also an answer. 60 can be divided evenly by 3. Our next one is 4. So the rule for 4 is if the last 2 digits form a number divisible by 4. And we only have 2 digits in this number. If we had like a 3-digit number like 360, we would only use the last 2 digits. But since we only have 2 digits, we just use those. So basically, can 60 be evenly divided by 4? So let's go ahead and do that. 60 divided by 4. 4 goes into 6 one time. 2 left over. Bring down that 0. And 4 goes into 20 5 times. So yes, it goes in evenly for 4. So 4 is also an answer. And then we go on to 5. If it's divisible by 5, if the last digit is 0 or 5. And obviously 60 ends in a 0. So yes, it's divisible by 5. And then we go to 6. If the number is divisible by both 2 and 3. So we can just look at what we've already done. We said yes, it was divisible by 2, and yes, it was divisible by 3. So now it's automatically divisible by 6. We know 60 divided by 6 is 10. On to 9. If the sum of the digits is divisible by 9. So remember the sum, we already did that up here. 6 plus 0, our two digits are 6 and 0, so we add those together to get the sum. 6 plus 0 is 6, and 6 is not divisible by 9. We're not going to get a whole number. So 9 is not an answer. And then the last one, 10. If the last digit is 0, and yes, it is 0. So it is divisible by 10. So we have 60 is divisible by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10. So that just means if we divided 60 by all of those numbers, it would go in evenly and we would have a whole number as our quotient. All right, example number 2, we're going to do the same thing. So we have the number 78 this time. So looking at 2, is the last digit even? And yes, it is. There's an 8, so it is divisible by 2. 3, if the sum of the digits is divisible by 3. So we have 7 and 8 as our digits. So if we add those together, we get 15. And 15 is divisible by 3. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So yes. Moving on to 4. If the last two digits form a number divisible by 4. So again, we only have two digits. So let's try it. 78 divided by 4. 4 goes into 7 one time. 3 left over. Bring down the 8. And that goes in 9 times for 36. And we're actually going to have 2 left over. So no, that does not go in evenly. So 4 is not an answer. 5. If the last digit is 0 or 5, and no, our last digit's 8, so it's not divisible by 5. 6. If the number is divisible by 2 and 3, and yes, we already said it is divisible by 2 and 3, so that means it's divisible by 6. Moving on to 9. If the sum of the digits is divisible by 9. And we did the sum up here. 7 plus 8 is 15. And 15 cannot be evenly divided by 9. So 9 is not an answer. And then the last one, 10. If the last digit is 0 and it's not a 0, it's an 8. So it is not divisible by 10. So 78 is divisible by 2, 3, and 6. If we divided 78 by 2, 78 by 3, and 78 by 6, we would get whole numbers as our quotient. All right, example number 3. Now we're going to talk about multiples. And remember I said multiples are basically skip counting. So they want us to tell whether the first number, which is 72, is a multiple of the second number, which is 3. Now this colon here doesn't mean anything in the middle. It's just there to separate the two numbers. So basically what they're asking us is if we skip counted by 3s, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and we kept going, would we eventually get to 72? And we could keep skip counting to figure that out. Or another really easy way to do that is just to simply divide. So let's divide 72 divided by 3. 3 goes into 7 one time. We have 1 left over. Bring down the 2. And 3 goes into 12 4 times. And that goes in evenly. So, yes, it is a multiple. If we skip counted 14 times, we would get to 72. So the answer is yes. And then our last example is factors. You guys should be experts at factors because we've been doing them on number of the day since the beginning of the year. So list the factors of 36. So basically we're saying what two numbers multiply together to get 36. So on our number of the day, we usually do it like this. We make two columns and we kind of write one on one side and the other on the other. So we're going to do it that way for starters. So we have 1 times 36 equals 36. 2 times 18. 3 times 12. 4 times 9. And 6 times 6. Now, when we start talking about greatest common factor, which is going to be something we talk about later in this unit, we're going to need to list the factors in order. So we can take what we have in this chart and we're just going to put them all in a line and we're going to put them from least to greatest. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and I just used all the numbers in my first column here. And now I'm going to work my way from the bottom to the top in my second column. And I don't need to count 6 again because it's the same number. I don't need to count the same number twice. So 9, 12, 18, 36. Okay, so those are the factors of 36. When we multiply them together, we get 36. All right, here are your practice problems. 1 and 2, they want to know if they are divisible. So I would go ahead and write down the numbers for number 1, 228, and for number 2, 117, and go back and look at that divisibility chart because you're going to need to use that. For number 3, you're telling if 368 is a multiple of 2. So basically if you skip count by 2's, if you're going to get to 368. And remember, you can just divide to see if that's true. And number 4, list the factors of 80. Don't forget a word problem or a question and rate your understanding.